Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ray Kuhl. I'm CEO of PBSI Technology Solutions. I want to welcome many of you who are longtime clients and friends. Thank you very much for your long-term support. For many of you, this is your first exposure to PBSI. So in today's webinar, we're going to be very specific with topics. I want to thank you for joining our topic today, how to protect yourself from dark web exposure. So the content, why do we need protection? This will be very easy and very short. We'll do an exposed password check so you can see exactly what it means to take a look onto the bad side, the dark side of things, and find out what kind of information is there. Then we'll have a conversation about, in light of that, what should we do about it and what kind of security protection tools are available to prevent and mitigate. So once again, thank you for joining. So for those of you not familiar with PBSI, we have been providing services for healthcare business and nonprofit clients in the tri-state for over 30 years. Very thankful for many of you who've been clients for a good bit of that time. So one of the things that's very important to understand about PBSI, and as a CEO, I'm blessed to say 75% of our staff have been with us 10 years or more. So we add new people, we add talent, not to think that everybody's old, stodgy. That's not the case. We're a growing active security and technology company, and our relationships are much appreciated. The goal of today's webinar is to inform and educate, not to sell services. So we offer security services. We have products to sell. We try to make every one of our webinars informative. So why do we need protection? Increasingly, PCs are being infected with malware that steals passwords and copies data, keylogging and phishing attacks. The problem, or a problem, is that the victim is typically not notified, and it's speculated there are millions of active PCs out there where data is being grabbed and passwords are being further compromised, and simply making this problem worse. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do a dark web exposed password check, and what I'm going to show you documents that currently ticking, there are over 2.7 billion email addresses for sale on the dark web. Of them, 1.2 billion have had their password exposed, meaning available in clear text. And we'll talk about the ramifications of that. Everybody's familiar, or at least most of us are familiar, last year with a very large Equifax breach. There were more than 30 breaches last year larger than Equifax. So without further ado, I'm now going to log in to a very secure site where PBSI has secured license access to be able to do this kind of query. What we're going to do is a window into a place on the web that none of us can get to. You need a Tor browser, you need, I'm never going to log into the dark web myself, but this tool we use is a window into the dark web. So you can see on the right-hand side of the screen that the location by IP address of where most of the hacks come from might be a shock to some, might not be a surprise at all to some others. This is a worldwide problem. This is not an issue of U.S. criminals, generally speaking. So what I'm going to do in this demonstration is I'm going to go straight to doing a search on the dark web for PBSI credentials. Now, I've done a search for many of your organizations in advance, and there are some of you connected to today's webinar where you have more than 100 exposed emails. I'm not trying to say that to frighten you. I'm saying this is something you might want to pay attention to. So I will never expose another organization's emails in doing this kind of a query. So what I'm going to do, which I could do for any of you, we can do for any of you, is I'm going to do a query to PBSI's main domain site, pbsinet.com. And it says we have 42 exposed email addresses. So this list is actual PBSI email addresses in sequence of the date of exposure. So this email address, a real PBSI employee, the date of exposure means showing as November 1st, 2017, means that's the date the data was put for sale. In this same group includes an employee who's been deceased for many years. In other words, these are not, and you'll find the same thing with your organization. Some will be former employees, some will be no longer with the organization. The point there is that this doesn't, things don't go to the dark web for sale when they're exposed. They go after the hacker's done with them, or they've decided how to monetize the data that they have. So the columns I want to point to are the password column and the cracked column. So in the password column, if you see 3 X's, that means the password was not available in the data breach. If you see a long, complex thing like this, that means the password was too complex to be, or it didn't come through as clear text. But over here in this column to the right, that's titled cracked, means they ran a password cracker against it, and that is the clear text password. So please know, I have not exposed any email addresses or passwords here where these haven't long been changed by PBSI staff. But I want to point out my own. So that is my own email address and what used to be, until I saw this query, my own, quote, normal password. The day I saw that my password was out there, as careful as I am, security professional and all that, my password was out there that I used on lots of different websites. It became real to me that very day. Don't use a normal password. Don't use a normal password. How many times have we all heard that? My guess is that many of you listening still use a normal password. Hopefully you'll decide what I did that day, change it. And that day, I explored setting up a password manager and doing some other things. So the point here is there are passwords exposed out here where none of these people likely made a mistake. Instead, what happened is that their data was hacked by a compromise of Twitter or MySpace. So here's an employee where MySpace, it says an unknown hacker group started selling stuff from a MySpace breach from 2013 and so forth. So sometimes the source of the data is made known. Sometimes the hacker just puts a group of email addresses and passwords out there, and nobody's really sure where they came from. But the fact is, we know there are 2.7 billion of these out there, and 1.2 billion of them have an exposed password in plain text. So what does that mean? Enough said with the frightening information. I can go in and do some other queries. We can query individual domains like at yourorganization.net or .com or .org or whatever, and we can also query lists of individual passwords. So I have certainly done this with all my non-work passwords, and we've done this for lots and lots of other folks too. So the point is, you can't really fix it. Once the data's out there, it's out there. But on the other hand, now that it's been exposed, evaluating what that means, the issue really is, once a certain email address and a certain password are exposed, that is a wide open door for a hacker to try that same username and password on lots of other sites. And the frequency of success, if you use the same password lots of places, even 2 places, even 3 places, you can imagine you have compromised yourself. Once that compromise has gotten into your work network, Katie bar the door. So leading to, what do we do about this? So one thing I'm going to just discuss quickly, and we've got all kinds of security training information that we provide at no cost, and in some cases at very reasonable cost. I'm going to go through some guidelines. What do we do about it? That we have handouts. You're welcome to request these. But the most important thing is change your passwords. Today would not be too soon. And don't use normal passwords. I repeat, don't use normal passwords. Make variations. So this is really, really difficult. So the solution for almost all of us is we need to use a password manager. So we don't sell LastPass or Dashlane. There's a free version of LastPass that's actually very, very capable. The one for $24 a year offers only a couple, but a couple real important options. So use a password manager. None of us can remember all the passwords we need to, and how do we have unique passwords without automating a tool? It stores an encrypted form and is available synchronized across all devices. So once you use a password manager, they're shared whether you're using your PC, your laptop, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android, your Mac, whatever. Use a password manager. So one of the principles we want to teach all employees is don't cross work and personal passwords. If you have in the past, stop, because you don't want a mistake where you put your account on Target and Target gets hacked. Now that has the risk of exposing your work site. So make sure staff don't use the same passwords on work sites and personal sites. Enabling two-factor authentication, cautions about public Wi-Fi. This is really important. People don't understand. Public Wi-Fi is not secure. I could go into lots of detail, but the things you type when you're on an airplane or in an airport or in a Starbucks can actually be seen as you're doing it by somebody with free software and connected to that same network. So don't use public Wi-Fi if you're going to log into a secure site unless you're using an encrypted tool like a password manager. So how to find out if your passwords have been compromised, I'll give you pricing information in just a bit so you can see we can help you do that. Okay, quickly, this isn't the topic for today's webinar, but I want to just review some of the very, very most important things. What do we want to make sure every employee knows? So some of you in your responses to this webinar requested information about how to keep emails secure. So I decided to include this information. I'll be very brief with this. We have more detail. No unapproved downloads. That means no downloads. That means no downloads. That means screensavers, weather apps, music and lyric downloads, iTunes. So what does it mean? You go to your manager is responsible to approve, and your manager says, I have no idea if that's okay. So what's the manager's response? No downloads until it gets to your highest level IT or your CEO who says, okay, this one's okay. So I'm not saying no downloads really. You have a business-oriented app that's needed to work in your organization. Of course, that's okay. But be very, very careful and certainly stay away from all screensavers, weather apps. These things are loaded with malware. Email safety principles, although there are a couple of dozen of these, the most important are pay special attention to unsolicited email. Lots of emails come from people who, quote, you know. If Ray sends you an email and you asked Ray to send an email, that's solicited. Okay, fine. Ray's responding to my email. It's very low likelihood that's a problem. But if Ray sends you an email and you didn't expect it, that's unsolicited. So throw out the door the fact that you, quote, know Ray, because this might look like it's from Ray and it's not. So the context means everything there. What's unusual about this email? Time of day, recipient list, brief content. Do I expect this kind of an email from this person or this organization? So you get a security webinar invitation from PBSI. That's unsolicited. Pay attention to it. Make sure doesn't look out of character. But on the other hand, it's not unexpected. If you're on our list, we send these invitations, and it's up to each individual to judge who they trust and what they trust. But you don't just pass out trust because of a name. It's just the examples are in the hundreds and thousands of folks who send out emails that appear to be Amex, UPS, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. There have been some recent ones come around. Because you trust the, quote, company does not mean you trust this email. So another thing, don't get your news from your email. Fake news is real. I remember the day I got an email that said, CEO of United Airlines was fired over the incident a few months ago where the passenger was thrown off the plane. And I remember seeing that email and thinking, I didn't know that. I didn't click on it, and good thing, because it never happened. News in email, Olympic results, just don't click on an email. Go to your news source, get your news there. Don't click on emails, antenna up. Okay, enough said. And most of you are well familiar, but I have a good sense that many of you have employees where you hope they know, but in likelihood, they probably don't. Or at least some of them, many of them, it only takes one employee to make a mistake to compromise the organization. Okay, secure my electronic workspace, the basic blocking and tackling of patch management that needs to be up to date and some manner of monitoring this. So PBSI does this. It's a really useful thing. Out-of-date patches that are not yet installed are the open door to hackers worldwide who, once a security patch is released, they realize, oh, there's an issue prior to that with Microsoft Office 10 or whatever the software is, and they begin probing for old versions, and finding them gives them an open door, and the solution is install a security patch before they start probing, which means as real time as possible. So this is about setting PCs correctly, and it's about monitoring them, because I can tell you from doing patch management monitoring for hundreds of clients, patches, many of them just don't install correctly, and they don't install without quote manual supervision. So we have an account manager for every single client, and at least once a week they manually review each device for each client and make sure that any patches that didn't update get attended to, so that they do. Visit work-related sites only. And if my PC, this is a general issue for any employee, if my PC is running slowly, don't just assume it's old. Old PCs aren't slow. It was fast 5 years ago. Why isn't it fast today? So there are some legitimate reasons, patch updates and so forth, but generally speaking, it's as likely a sign that there's malware running there, something that's not really intended. So ask for review. We do this for clients at no cost when we're doing security monitoring. So external communication, email and attachments. Hopefully all of you know that protected information, whether it's healthcare information or it's personally identifiable information for PCI compliance, social security numbers, credit card numbers, dates of birth, account numbers, you may not send those things by email without violating security regulations. And so to do that successfully, you need to encrypt email, either encrypting attachments or encrypting the email. This is something that's straightforward to do. It's not that expensive. It's simply you can't use email, not Gmail, not Outlook Mail, not any email comes out of the box with encryption unless you attach some features to it. And then, of course, no social media. So hopefully it's a quick list, but hopefully a helpful list of some of the things that we need to teach our employees. So PBSI offers training services in a couple of ways, and I'll talk about that briefly a bit more. But the next and really the final topic that I want to go to is how would we know if our network is secure, and what kinds of protections do we need to make sure are in place. So I'm going to do a demonstration now of PBSI security monitoring. For those of you who are a security client, you can consider this a demonstration of what we're already doing on your behalf, except for there may be some things that we're not doing, like data breach scanning is a separate option, online backup monitoring is a separate option. But the rest of these are all included in our basic service. For those of you not familiar, I'm going to do a lot of things really quickly here, and so if you drop off for a few seconds, you might miss something important because I'm going to talk quickly. So I'm now going to go to the live website that PBSI uses for monitoring clients. So this is a live dashboard. On the left-hand side, there's a list of clients where PBSI is monitoring their activities, and I could pick on a particular client and just see their devices. Well, I've done that here, so the only thing you see exposed are devices at PBSI. So on the right-hand side of the screen, so if I'm a dashboard technician, I'm not going to select an individual client. I'm going to see servers across all of PBSI clients. The most problematic server will come to the top, and you're not seeing red and yellow much on this because we're monitoring these, but highlights, alerts, security alerts, unauthorized login attempts will show up as yellow and red and increasing severity depending on the problem. So servers, workstations, mobile devices, network devices like switches and firewalls all can be monitored. So what I'm going to do real quickly is demonstrate for a server the kinds of things. So I've selected an individual server. If I pick a different server at PBSI, the stuff in the south panel changes. These are the things being monitored for the server selected up top. So I'm going to select our site concentrator, and we'll see that there are some yellow indicators here where there's a performance issue. So I'm not going to focus on performance issues. I'm going to focus on security issues. But a dashboard technician can drill into, so how are the processors? This particular unit has multiple processors, and one of them's full, which is why it appeared yellow. And if I want to drill into the detail report that shows me for every monitored device, I can make some selections, but it tells me what's the history of this device over the past 24 hours and over the last 8 days. So we can see, is this a consistent pattern? Do things happen in isolated events? So I'm not going to go further into that, but just know that there's not only top-level alerts, but there's drill-down capability into history. So moving down on the list of things that can be monitored, bandwidth. So if you're having internet speed issues and you don't know why, we can drill into that and identify when the bandwidth has been bad, how frequently it's been bad. Your phone system can be connected, as ours is. All kinds of Windows services that if these are running successfully, that's a protection. If they're not running, then that would tell us something different. Why did that service stop? So SNMP checks, these are specifically set up network tests where we can look at a UPS. You may have had a UPS that went bad and had a server go down because of it, where it makes a noise and blinks and beeps, but if nobody's in the room, you don't notice it. Here, we're actually monitoring online. No battery needs replacing, the battery's normal. So these are things that are checked electronically, and each monitored device submits its information to the secure site every 15 minutes automatically. We set it up that way, and then so we have an always up-to-date list. Are the switches okay? Are the printers, are there any toner needing replacing? Bandwidth is okay, and so forth. So there are security events like failed logins, and there are physical events like, is my disk okay? So I'm going to move quickly to workstations. And it's a really quick overview, and I'm at risk just losing you in detail. I don't want to do that because I'm not trying to teach you to be a technician. What I'm trying to do is to identify that there's some really important things that can be seen from afar so that you at your desk and me at my desk don't need to pay attention to these things. So I'm going to look for workstations. So these are the workstations at PBSI, and it knows what's going on at each one. I'm going to look for workstations that have the name array in them. And so here's my MacBook, here's my home PC, here's my Microsoft Surface. And generally, the dashboard technician can see the status of each column. So managed antivirus, the green dot there says, yep, it's all updated, it's all okay. Web protection looks good, and so forth. So the technician's looking for things that are red and yellow. But if I pick a particular PC, I'm going to pick now the PC at which I'm sitting right now as I'm speaking to you. So the dashboard technician can see these kinds of details about Ray's PC that Ray cannot see. How do you go to your PC and find out if your antivirus is running and if there's been no failed login attempts and that your disks are reporting okay and what kind of events have taken place and that you have 2 missing vulnerabilities? Most of us sitting at our desk doing our work, we don't care about those things. We don't want to know about them. Somebody's monitoring them on our behalf. But some things that can be monitored, patches. So you see here, there are 2 pending patches. Anything that's not, these are the things I said, they must be up to date. Pending means it's been selected on the normal update schedule, which we have done twice a week. These will be installed. So if I go to a different PC, I can find some that are missing. So this one will likely be caught, but a dashboard technician, if they were overviewing this PC, they would right-click and approve that and turn it into pending status. And sometimes this is necessary because patches failed. Sometimes there's a status called failed. Why does a patch fail? Nobody really knows. There are all kinds of reasons. Might have been turned off. Something might have been running on the PC. But the point there is somebody's paying attention to it and making sure your patches are up to date. We know what hardware and software is installed on this PC. We know how much RAM there is. We know what software is being used, that there's Microsoft Office 365 and Adobe Professional and so forth. So these monitors that take place are important. So there's a vulnerability scan run every night, and vulnerabilities are highlighted if there are any. And that's a process that's really important. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to demonstrate an optional thing called data breach risk analysis. So to do that, and I wouldn't do this one PC by one PC, but on Ray's PC, we have this set to run every night as we do for all high importance PCs. And I want to look at the data breach risk scan. So this runs every night on Ray's PC. And choose the right history here. I may already have that open. Oh, I do, on Ray's PC. So I can click on Ray's PC and it shows me this. This is what the scan showed last night on my PC. It says there's roughly $3,600 worth of exposed, meaning unencrypted data stored on Ray's PC. What does that mean? There are some social security numbers and there are some dates of birth that it found. If we run this on a controller or a VP of finance or a person running payroll that might have an Excel spreadsheet with social security numbers, or on a billing person's desk where they might have downloaded an Excel file with social security numbers of patients, we might find hundreds of thousands of dollars of exposed data. So the data is valued based on how much a piece of data is worth for sale on the internet. So it found 4 files on Ray's PC. One is in Ray's recycle bin. Oh, what do you know? In the recycle bin, even after I deleted, I think it's deleted, but it's not. It still sits there. And this is a file I intentionally deleted and left in my recycle bin, where you can see by these numbers that ending 2233, these aren't real Social Security numbers, but they look like it. So to the scan, now if that file were encrypted, it would not be found. So here's the file that I deleted in order to get that same kind of information. Here's something that it finds on Ray's Google Docs drive. Same kind of information. And here's something it found on Ray's OneDrive. So it looks at what's connected to your PC. So it's very, very thorough. You really could, there's no way you could go to a PC, sit down and use Windows Explorer to find all of the unencrypted data. So the purpose of this data breach scan, which is essential in a lot of healthcare environments, it's essential for payroll and human resource and financial controllers, where the data that would be exposed, here's the thing, if a hacker got a hold of my PC, if I got a piece of malware, what could they find? And so it tells me that in advance so that I can delete it or encrypt it in advance. So it's a protection that's well worth $3 a month per PC. Okay. So one other thing I'm going to do is look at online backup. So online backup we can set on any device, and this screen is for one device that I selected, and it tells me on each day that we're backing up some files and folders, and we're backing up the what would be necessary in order to recreate this PC from a piece of hardware. And every day there's a green line across the top as the day there was a successful backup, and if anything weren't successful, it would show me that graphically, and we would have gotten an alert. So the thing about this backup is that it's not only stored in the cloud, it's stored locally on each PC, you can do this for PCs, but for servers also, what that will do is store a local copy first and highly encrypt it so it's protected from ransomware. So I promised we would be through in 30 minutes, and we will. So although that was quick, hopefully clear enough that having your antivirus that's updated, monitored, patch management that's monitored, nightly vulnerability scanning issues that come up, network devices, which I didn't really show you how switches and the kinds of security things we can learn about wireless access points, that kind of thing. Data breach scanning, online backups, those are some of the components that are very inexpensive to have monitored, and that is how you know, are my devices safe? So if you ask yourself, and some of you absolutely should have this done because you have lots of exposed passwords. If we run an exposure and it comes up with less than 25 exposed email addresses, then here's the cost. So this is the service that we pay for that finds exposed emails. If we run a check for you and there are no exposed passwords, it's free to use, free to us. We're happy to do it on your behalf. And if there are individual email addresses you want us to check, we can find out what's exposed, exactly what passwords are exposed, and we're very, very careful with this data. We never supply this information without encrypting it to a client, but we can tell you exactly which passwords are compromised. And we've never had a case where we've done that where, one, the client wasn't shocked, and two, they didn't take immediate action and communicate with their staff that they need to change their passwords. So don't wait till you're shocked like I was shocked. Do this proactively. So some other things, you've seen the online monitoring, including all the services. $6 a month includes the antivirus and all of the monitoring services. Add $3 a month per PC for data breach scanning. Online backup just depends on whether it's a PC or a server. We do security training classes. We also offer ongoing KnowBe4 security training. It's an ongoing email and video program that has tests and documents which employees have been trained and how people have done. Really useful. And we can also help do security risk assessments. So I wanted to just give everybody a sense for what kind of cost. If you chose to take action on any of those, you're welcome to. So I want to thank you for your attendance today. We are finished.